Welcome as always to Model Steam Engine's Top Tip Time. This one is part 46. This is a compilation video showing some very useful hints and tips. This episode features the building of a steam plant using two Cotswold Heritage steam engines. It appears logical to start the video by telling you what the engines are, so here we go. This engine is a Cotswold Heritage Vulcan beam engine. And taking a close look at the engine, I must say I'm very impressed with the build quality. After sitting and staring at the layout of the steam plant for a while, I think it's time to give the engines a bit of a run just to make sure they don't need any attention before I fit them all in place. Before I go any further though, I'm going to oil both of these engines. The majority of steam engines use a total loss oil system, whether they be full-size steam engines or small ones like these. In the video clip currently on screen, you can see that I'm putting oil into all the little oiling points on the engine. Wherever there's a moving part, it needs some oil, and that includes the slide valve and the piston and the cylinder. My compressed air line has an inline oiler built into the supply, but I always put a little bit of oil into the steam chest before I start. The first engine to run is the one on the left. This is a Cotswold Heritage Cyclops engine, and it is called a Hypocycloidal Steam Engine. And here it is running in slow motion so you can see how it works. I really think I need one of these in my life. I can watch this for hours. It's a thing of great beauty. The other engine's pretty good too. This is a Cotswold Heritage Vulcan beam engine. And both of these engines run very well indeed. And the funny noise that you've just heard is me blowing into this thing. This is called a chuff pot. It's a very clever design and it's very well made. Apart from looking at the general layout of the plant, I have to think about the piping layout and of course the displacement lubricator position. This looks stupid stuck on the steam chest of the engine. There's nothing wrong with the displacement lubricators, they just look a bit ugly and overscale. So I'm going to think again about this. I'm removing the steam taps first. And why am I removing the steam taps? Well, I'm just going to see what they look like without them. And they look like this. In the centre at the front of the steam plant, I'm going to build a special steam turret incorporating a whistle and a valve to allow the connection of an air line for running the engines on compressed air. So at the moment I'm looking at the feasibility of mounting these lubricators at each end of the turret. So the piping begins, starting with a PM Research 90-degree cast elbow. I buy them from Forest Classics in the UK because it's quicker and more convenient. And on the Forest Classics website it says they are 1/4 by 40 threads per inch. But I've never found them to be so. What I always have to do is run a 1/4 by 40 tap down them to make them 1/4 by 40. But if you're doing this, don't over tighten them because otherwise this happens. And I didn't do this on purpose for the video. Yes, it was incompetence, not incontinence, incompetence. There is a subtle difference in the two words. Anyway, I've got loads more, so it's not a big problem. The two steam taps for these two engines are built onto two displacement lubricators. It's really a cosmetic thing because the hand wheels are on the right hand side of the displacement lubricator like this one. I'm going to modify one of these so that the tap is on the left hand side, so I have a matched pair, a right and a left. I've got the T-piece part of the lubricator screwed into a union nut which is in the chuck. What I'm going to do is plug the other end, the end which normally takes the steam inlet, with this piece of bolt. This is a 2BA brass bolt. I've threaded the hole 2BA, so all I need to do is drill a hole down the centre of this bolt in the normal way. Then I need to drill a 5/32 hole in the other end to accommodate the shaft of the tap. Then all I have to do is screw this piece of bolt with the hole down the centre into the other end. It's most important though that when the tap is shut, it needs to be in exactly the same position as the other tap when it's shut, so that they both match. It may sound complicated, but it's not really. By doing a test fit like this, I've realised that I need to cut about another 3 2BA threads, which will allow the 2BA bolt with the hole in it to move closer to the pointer on the end of the shaft, and then everything will be fine. And when both of the steam taps are fully closed, they will be in exactly the same position as each other, so it will look okay. In this clip I'm threading the hole at the opposite end of the steam tap using this 2BA tap, and I'm being very careful not to overdo it and cut the thread too deep down into the fitting. Well, at this stage paranoia was setting in, and I thought, I wonder if I've drilled the hole in the centre deep enough, so I thought, well, I'll drill it a bit deeper just in case, but as it turns out it was fine. In this clip I'm using an equivalent of Loctite 603, and this will stop the threaded bolt that I'm fitting down inside the steam tap from ever working loose. So all I have to do now is just screw the steam tap onto this 2BA bolt, making sure that I get it in exactly the right position, so that the distance between the hand wheel and the gland nut on the tap is exactly the same as the other one. And just to make sure of this, here's the other one. Yes, that's near enough for rock and roll. I could have just made an extra steam turret with extra valves and remotely mounted these displacement lubricators with the valves on them, but it would have looked pretty stupid. I always like to do the job properly, so when this is finished I think you will agree that it will look very nice indeed. Once again paranoia is setting in, and I'm double checking to make sure that the steam tap is exactly in the right position, and it is. Now I'm withdrawing the steam tap because I don't want any Loctite that may be present to get on the thread of the tap itself. A steam tap that doesn't open at all is about as much use as a chocolate teapot. I've now put the steam tap and displacement lubricator assembly back in the lathe, and I'm drilling from the other end using a centre drill. The centre drill drills a hole in the end which is at 60 degrees, which will match a standard union cone. Here's a top tip: if you're using a centre drill to drill into an existing hole like I'm doing, you may find that it chatters. All you have to do is just turn the lathe by hand and it stops chattering and you get a good finish. And while on the subject of top tips, it's a good idea, after working on a part like this in the lathe, to blow it through with an airline to get rid of any particles of metal. But it's not the end of the world with a steam engine. Some people get really anal about steam engines. If any small particles of metal get into the cylinder, well, what's the first thing that's going to happen with a steam engine? Steam goes into the steam chest, condenses to water, and that washes any foreign bodies out before the engine even starts to run. I'm proudly showing off my handed pair of displacement lubricator steam tap combinations. I really did think it would be a good idea to retain the use of these, because they're genuine Cotswold Heritage lubricator valve units, so now we just have a slightly modified pair of Cotswold Heritage lubricator valve units. This whistle is going to be mounted on the turret, which is not the ideal place for it, but it's very convenient. The steam valve is very accessible right at the front of the plant, so there's no need to reach into the plant and risk burning your fingers or catching your fingers in the machinery. I find that it's very important to sit and think before rushing into doing a job like this. I had a look at both of the engines, and both of the engines are machined from castings that are very square. Both of the main mounting frames on the Vulcan and the Hypocycloidal engine are square in section, and that's why I decided to make the steam turret top square. And that is it for this episode of Top Tip Time. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my main Steam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.